Did you know that nearly 85% of franchise businesses succeed beyond the first 5 years, compared to only 50% of independent startups? Welcome to another insightful episode of Spark and Ignite Your Marketing. And I'm your host, Beverly Cornell. Today, I'm excited to introduce Tim Parmeter, the founder and CEO of FranCoach. FranCoach is a national search firm partnered with over 600 top franchisors spanning nearly 70 industries, dedicated to helping clients determine if franchise ownership is the right path for them. Tim's journey from the corporate world to entrepreneurship is inspiring, and his dedication to helping others achieve their business dreams is truly remarkable. Tim, it's wonderful to have you here today.
Beverly, thanks so much for letting me come join you today on your show. Thanks so much.
We got past some technical difficulties, and here we are on Zoom. So if to our listeners and watchers, if the background looks a little bit different, we are using a different tool today. Got to go with the flow. I'll be a part of an entrepreneur. Yeah. So,
Yes, and you're dealing with an old guy, so technology, and I'm just my bad.
well, I'm 49, so I'm there. I'm there with you, Jim. Okay. So talk a little bit about how you got into the world of franchising and FranNet. Like, tell me that story.
So you had kind of mentioned the journey from the corporate world to being an entrepreneur was inspiring. I don't know if it's inspiring. It was dumb luck, really, and a certain level of desperation. And so many of the clients that we work with, I had a job. It was okay, right? Paid the bills, and no fault of mine and the office I worked in, and I won't name names, but kind of insurance, financial service, the people that ran the office committed a few $1 million worth of insurance and security fraud, which apparently is frowned upon. Who knew, right? It got the whole office shut down. So everybody that was there doing their job got right. And I was at a weird point kind of personally in my life. I'd had well, I didn't have the baby, but I was a relatively new father, and we were already in a position. We were trying to figure out, oh my gosh, how are we co-parenting and all this crazy stuff. I was sick of working for people, and uh, um, I needed more flexibility. I needed to relocate. I needed all these things, and I just kind of stumbled upon the word being a franchise broker, consultant, coach, whatever. I didn't know nothing about nothing when it came to franchising, but I had somebody who was like, I can kind of I'll give you a few months and show you what this is. And I'm like, really, it was basically, okay, well, I have nothing to lose. Right. And I get to try something out. I'm not super smart, but I figured I'm smart enough to learn something a little bit different. And my background was teaching, coaching, recruiting, training. That's kind of what I sounded like I was going to be doing. So I was like, what the heck, let's go. And 10 and a half years later, here we are. But it wasn't by design. I knew nothing about it, no background in it. It was pure dumb luck combined with desperation. And here we go.
So I'm an unplanned entrepreneur as well, and out of necessity, had to start my own business. My husband is an active duty military officer, and we move every 2, 3 years. So I had to take my show on the road and figure that out 13 years ago before remote work was really kind of quote unquote popular and easy and accessible. So I had to get real creative real fast and figure it out. But I don't say dumb luck. I say opportunity met some luck, and then hard work made it successful, right? So
Yeah.
be kind. It's that is
You do, but you have to be open to possibilities, right? And I think it's cheesy and foo-foo a little bit, and usually those things make me want to punch myself in the face, but it's true. It's you have to be if we just get out of our own dang way,
right.
things do just kind of open up, and it's oh, okay, right? Would I have made this leap had nothing happened with the job? Probably not, right? I
Yeah,
would have
same.
just stayed there and not been I would have not been happy, not fulfilled, right? And it
Mhm,
would have just been blah
mhm.
because that's what I thought we were supposed. Our parents raised us to go to college, get a degree, get a job, right? Work there till you're 65, get your gold watch and your pension. Well, our parents were dirty liars. It doesn't work like that anyway. Maybe not intentionally, but as it turned out, they were. And so I would have just like kept plugging along. So I needed that kind of like bad situation to happen to get me pointed in this direction. And it's been absolutely the best thing ever.
Same. I mean, if it wasn't for that situation, I don't think I had worked for a tech startup. I knew how much work it took to start a business, and I was not disillusioned in that. And I was like, "That's crazy." And then there it was, like 2 years later, doing the same thing, and a little
Yeah.
bit crazy, but all worth it. Like you said, I would not go back or trade it for anything. It has changed
Yeah.
my life for so much the better. And gosh, the amount of personal growth, business growth, professional growth that has come from it has you could not even put that in the classroom. You just
Yep.
in the classroom. So
Yep.
that's very cool. So one of my questions is what are the kitchen table moments? But it says here that you literally started at the kitchen table.
Yeah. Yeah. So, um, I really like it was not the most like proud part of my personal and professional journey and history back then, but I was living in a suburb of Dallas. Like I had literally had a one-bedroom apartment. Um, and when I started this, it was I had a laptop. That was the only thing I got from the job. I kept the laptop. Um, I think that was allowed at that point. I didn't really care, right? And so um I my brain works weird ways. So I'm like, literally one side of the kitchen table was where I ate, and the other side was the office, right? It was almost like we need like a little line across the middle of the table, right? And I just like I got started, and I fortunately from recruiting, I knew how to at least kind of source people to reach out to because it was like basically it was just I had to kind of figure it out, right? And so there's a thing, and I literally have on my wall over here still in a frame, but there's when I got going, I'm like, there were some rough days at the beginning of, oh my gosh, what have I done? I don't know what I'm doing. I'm really here by myself, right? All of this stuff. And I'm making call after call after call after call after call. Nobody's answering, right? Nobody wants to talk to
Mm,
me. And if they did want to talk to me, I didn't really know what the heck I was supposed to say at that
mm,
point anyway, right? And so I just sat there with like a piece of paper and I wrote the letters like THTW, which was this has to work. And I took it and I taped it on the wall next to me. Like, and it would just sit there and I'm like, I'd have those bad moments. I'd look, okay, this has to work. Right. And so now it's in a little cheesy frame over here on the side of my
mm.
like side of my office. Where I have an actual office and not sharing with the kitchen table. But it was like again, it's worked out way beyond any of my wildest dreams. But man, it was hard at the beginning, and like it was one of those things where I just wasn't going to let myself quit. I felt like there was a pathway there for my skill, and the fact of having my own thing was way better than going back to work for somebody. But again, and you know this from starting it from scratch, it was tough. I'm all on my own. I'm trying to figure out every last thing, and then hoping it's right, or at least hoping I realize fast enough it's wrong to be able to make those changes and edits moving forward. But it was crazy, but that was just kinda like put my head down and kept going.
When you said, "What have I done?" It reminds me of parenthood. Literally
Yes.
birthing a baby in some ways, like, "What have I done?" And there's no manual on how to raise a child. I mean, there's lots of books, but, like, you have to just kind of figure it out. So, kinda like parenthood, when you said that, I literally had those
Yes.
moments of, "What have I done?" Thankfully, in my business, I literally
Right.
created a job, and now I have an agency. Like, that it has
Yep.
evolved, incredibly over the years. But, it is a process. And,
Yeah.
I mean, do you ever look at the frame again, and does it ever need to inspire you now? I still think there's moments even when you're seasoned.
I think I think so. One, I just admire how terrible of an artist I am because it's kind of like these little black letters and I had a highlighter and colored it in. So it's so ridiculously cheesy, right? Um, but but it's the same that you mentioned, like it's kind of like you're creating or a job or in franchising, sometimes the phrase will come up, oh, you're buying a job. And some people say that kind of almost derogatory, but there are a lot of franchise owners, that's exactly what they want, right? And it was the same thing for me. It was just me for the first 8 years or so. I had a couple part-time people that helped, right? But as I was the business, I was the doer. And then it's evolved over the last few years to where we've got me plus 10 other folks that are client facing, our coaches, got a support team of 8, right? And so the infrastructure, and then like as I started building that out, there were a couple of times that I got to kind of glance over, like, yeah, this has to work. Like I've put too much time and now money into it to create
Mhm.
infrastructures and the support and some of the things that I was doing that I was just winging it, or I had my own little acronyms. Now I got to train somebody, and they're like, "What's that mean?" I don't really know. That's just what I called it, right? Like I don't have like there are certain things like I don't have a reason, but now I've got to create a playbook for others. So there's still growing pains with that as we
Sure.
continue to evolve with, our systems, our support, those type of things where I'm like, I'm still the doer. I still love being able to work with clients, but I also have to really kind of be that executive now and
Mhm.
CEO and
Mhm.
and run the whole thing business too. And that's the client facing stuff is easy. It's fun. I've done it long enough. The true business ownership and kind of the CEO stuff I think will always be constantly evolving, because if you're not, you're gonna get caught behind, right? And then then it can be too hard to
Mhm.
catch up.
Mhm. So, who are your typical clients and what problems do you solve for them?
Typical client is a really wide range, but there is a little bit of a sweet spot. So we've had clients that we've helped start up. So we're here to help basically people figure out if they should own a franchise, and then if so, which one. So we've had clients as young as 22 that have become franchise owners, and we've had some in their early 70s and everywhere in between, right? Now, the sweet spot is their age starts with the letter F, right? They're 40s, maybe early 50s. They've been corporate in the corporate world, probably like management to kind of almost C-suite. Somewhere in
Mhm.
there, they've been running a big chunk of somebody else's business. They've been successful, but they've tired of hitting their head against the ceiling. There's nowhere else to go. They're working their
Mhm.
butt off for somebody else, right?
Mhm.
So that's the biggest chunk of people we work with. There's a lot of pain, and that problem you're solving is control, right? Is the number one reason people will start a franchise. It's control. And now that's slightly different for everybody, but it is usually some version of freedom, flexibility, their schedule, right? When you leave that job, you don't get to sell it to the next person.
Right.
When you're done with your franchise at some point, I mean, you can pass it on to your kids, but really the exit strategy is, hey, I've made all this money throughout my journey as a franchise owner. Now I'm going to sell it
Yeah.
also. So it
Right.
is kind of that generational wealth piece.
Mhm.
And the money is always a factor, but I'm telling you, like, it is never somebody's first word out of their mouth. I want a franchise because money. It's the freedom, flexibility, it's the lifestyle
Mhm.
that they are leading. They're still gonna work hard running their own business,
Mhm.
but they're doing it for themselves, and that's why.
Mhm. You're right. I think you're right that there is, um, like, yeah, for like you said, they have to be 40 and 50. They also have to have freedom. They want to have, I think even for myself, when I started my business, I needed the freedom to be able to move every 3 years because I knew it was going to be almost impossible to network everywhere we go in a timely manner to build that there locally, to find the high level executive jobs that I would be qualified for
Right.
and a job that I actually would like. Because I thought I probably could find a job, but would I find it fulfilling? So that fulfilling word too, entrepreneurs typically love to build things, and there is something inherent in. I've worked with several entrepreneurs who've had franchises, and they'll sell a franchise, but then they build something else afterwards. Like they're
Yeah.
never done building. There's something innately inside of them. They like to build things. So, do you see more women seeking franchises so that they could have the flexibility to have more balance in their lives? Because I feel like working a 9 to 5 job and being a mom is almost impossible.
It's happening more and more, right? I think for sure. In fact, like our team alone is probably 3/4 women, which probably borderline irritates my wife, right? Like it's like, oh, it's Tim's harem, right? Like it's just, but but they're one of them's not, but the rest of them are moms. One's a single mom, right?
Yes.
And I mean, she was our first, right? And so she totally needs that. And so you are seeing that more and more.
Mhm.
Um, and I think the other piece that happens that you wouldn't think of is how many folks in their 20s that we work with that I feel like that generation, it took them a few years what it took mine decades to figure out.
I agree.
Working for somebody else sucks. Like,
Mhm.
I wanna do this myself. I want the freedom and flexibility, to be able to, like, again, and do what I want, make this whatever I want. Do I want it to be small and that makes me happy? Awesome, right? And if you think about it, when you're at that age, you have a lot less bills,
Yep.
responsibilities,
All the
right?
things.
All of those things. Maybe you haven't made the mistake of having kids or getting married, right? So, like, and I say that mostly jokingly, right? But
Yes.
there's just fewer things that are going on in your
Mhm.
life.
How do you ensure that your clients find the perfect franchise to match their needs, skills, and expectations?
So, great question is one, it's a lengthy journey, right? It's not again, and I'm all about cheesy analogies. It's like we're gonna go through a few steps to figure out what you want to be when you grow up, basically, with what you want. Then we're gonna do the research. We'll get you connected with a few franchises that we think really check the boxes. And then we're gonna get you connected directly to those brands. But that becomes in a long, I mean, almost like a 2-month vetting process with a dozen or more steps, right? So it's like, I'm not gonna say, "Hey, Beverly, I got this person I think you should really go out with." Like, I'm not asking if you wanna marry them. I'm just like, "Go have a cup of coffee."
Yeah.
Right? And even and then it may go well, you're not
A
running off to
blind date.
Vegas to get married, right? So, like, it's a kind of an educated blind date, right? And so but what happens is when we get all the way to the end of this process, and this will sound crazy, and you can roll your eyes at me if you want, I don't care, but it happens every time. People don't have to make a decision. They get there and it is so crystal clear that they're gonna go, "Yes, this is the franchise for me." The part that people don't realize is franchises are awarded. So the franchise also has to say,
Mhm.
"Beverly, you're our person. We want to
Mhm.
award you a
Mhm.
franchise." Again, I can propose all day long, but until she
To say
says yes and
yes.
then ultimately says I do, it ain't happening. Same thing with this, but it really is that crystal clear. And no, I know darn good and well everybody rolls their eyes, they scoff at me when I say that, and then they get to the end and they're like, "Oh man, like that really happened. It is clear. Yes, this is the one. Let's go."
Clarity is huge. And if you help your customers, your clients have clarity, we do the same thing in marketing. We help them have clarity so that everything they do has focus and purpose. And it's just easier when things are clear. It
Yeah.
becomes like a no-brainer, like you said.
Yep.
And sometimes people feel overwhelmed by marketing, but when you're super clear, it becomes it all that kind of fades because now you know what you're supposed to do. There's no question. It's the filter with which you put everything through. And if you have your filter, like, I don't want to overuse the dating analogy, but if you know what you want or what you don't want, I think that's what more was for me as I knew what I didn't want, then
Right.
it becomes so much easier go to the spaces where the people or the businesses are
Yep.
that fit that
And you've
list.
got to be open to the possibilities that it's not what you think it's going to
Yes.
be.
Oh yeah.
Almost everybody we work with that starts a franchise, the franchise they end up owning, it is in an industry they have little to no experience in.
Yes.
It's something that they wasn't really necessarily on their radar before we started talking to them, and oftentimes it's something they didn't even know existed,
Yes.
right? Like, how is that possible? Take everything you've
Yeah.
learned and you've done, figure out what it is that makes you the happiest, and I promise you that never has anything to do with industry, even if they're like, "Oh, I really love dogs. I'm super passionate about dogs." Okay, maybe that's a pet franchise, but maybe owning a pet franchise makes you not like dogs anymore, right? Or
Mhm.
it's not the dog. So you have to kind of understand all that aspect of it. And that's again, for us, that's what we're just trying to kind of like open and flip people's minds around so we can truly find that match.
Is there a story of somebody that you connected a franchise with that is super memorable or feels very impactful for you?
Oh my gosh. So yes. Then you're probably gonna want me to share what that was, right? Franchises in the past. And then he went, he sold, he got a job, and that went about as well as you would imagine, right? And so he was back in the job search just because that's what you do.
Diesel. Yeah.
So we get talking, and based on his experience, one of the and again, like, we don't ignore industry. We do talk about it. I mean, there's usually a few things that I may suggest that people wouldn't have thought of. And so one of them for him was like business coaching or consulting. And I'm telling you what, he like his head spun around in circles. He started projectile vomiting green stuff and going on this tangent about how much he hates consultants, right? They just come in and tell you what you want to hear or what, this, and they're take your money and then they're gone. Like, they don't really understand anything. They're not really helpful. They think they're always the smartest person. Like, I'm telling you, it was 5 minutes to the point where literally I'm like, did you get that out of your system? Are you good
You feel
now?
better.
Right. So fast forward, he now owns a franchise that does business coaching. And it is one that has a very distinct view of coaching and consulting. They literally talk about that franchise says, we are coaches. Consultants, just like he had said, consultants go in and, tell you what to do, take your money and leave. We're there to ask questions, build relationships, and stay long term. What he thought a consultant was probably spot on. What he realized, this franchise doesn't consult, they coach. And he understood the difference between going in and being in like, well, Beverly, you need to do this, and this, hand me the money, peace out. Right. Versus coming in and sitting down and again, asking questions, building relationships, and really being that long-term partner. When he learned that his view of consultant was basically the same as this franchise, and they were doing the opposite, like, poof, like it was. And so it was, again, he was a delight to work with in general, but it was kudos to him for like having this visceral reaction to an industry, but still being open to getting connected to it. And as it just kept trickling along farther and farther and farther, it was like it got at the end, and like, oh yeah, like it was the easiest thing ever. He's like, yeah, let's go. Right. And that's how clear it needs to be. But it really takes that, again, somebody being open to explore something that may not seem like it could be the fit on the surface, or something different, something they don't know anything about. And that's scary, right? Because you're getting out of your comfort zone. Well, this is what I've always done. In the corporate world, your role defines you, right? Versus this gives you an opportunity to create who you are. And that was kind of what we ultimately did.
So good. I think even with the idea of marketing, the idea of you get to create what you want. Like you get to if you are really passionate about widgets, you can create what you want from that business. If you are passionate, but some other person could have the same business and market it entirely differently too. So I think there's like so much nuance in that. And I love the idea, like even my husband, he's active duty army and he does logistics. That's his role in the army. And I said, but you're not just like you could say logistics, but you could say a lot of things of what you do. You manage people, you manage things. Like it's really how you talk about
Right.
the work. And so much of us have experience, and just because I own a business, I have a lot of experience in human resources because I've had to fire, hire, train, coach, mentor, but I don't have an HR background. Like that's not my
Right.
background. But you
Right.
have real world practical experience based on what you've done that can fit into a lot of different buckets. And maybe you haven't thought about that bucket because nobody has
Yep.
presented that bucket to you.
Or even how to look at the different buckets. I got to hire staff. What kind? Right? Do we want really unskilled? Do you like training and developing? Do you
Mhm.
like more skilled people? Do you want to subcontract? Do you like having salespeople around you? How many of these? Right? And it's like people's minds is like, I didn't think of all that, right? Or your husband's example with logistics, right? So he is moving people and stuff around,
Mhm.
right? So that'll come up sometime. Well, I need something in logistics. Okay, how about a like pool cleaning business? Well, that's not logistics. Yes, it is.
Mhm.
You have your route efficiency. right?
Mhm.
I got Bob, my tech, going to this house here
Mhm.
and this house here and this house here because they're all right there versus here, here, and here,
Mhm.
right? And like, oh, I didn't think of it that way, right?
Or even
You
marketing into that neighborhood so that you can be more efficient with the
correct.
logistically. Yeah, there's a lot
Yep.
of things that can happen with that. Yes, super cool. I love it.
Yeah.
So how do you get customers? What kind of marketing do you do?
Oh, I'm supposed to market.
How do people learn you exist and how you can help them?
So sometimes they listen to amazing podcasts like this. And by the way, like military and veterans make fantastic
I
franchise
bet.
owners.
I bet.
They really understand the importance of following a plan or else,
Mhm.
know how to work hard, disciplined, all of those things. So, just saying if your husband is looking
Okay.
for, he's ready for his exercise, just throwing that out there.
Just plant the
So
seed
sometimes
just
like
in
that,
case. Yes.
shameless trolling.
Yes. Yes.
So,
Yes. This is happenstance connection. Yes. Uh-huh.
yes. And, sometimes that does happen, right? But
Mhm.
there's a lot of it is the education piece and that people don't realize, like, we want to buy a house. We know there's realtors, right? Hey, I might want to own a franchise. Wait, there's a franchise coach that can help me with this. So again, a lot of it just kind of from an educational standpoint. Again, we work with a lot of people in that kind of corporate transition
Mhm.
piece, and so a few ways in which we try to get in front of them. Um, we have not as we haven't been doing as long as you. We've had a podcast since 2020, one of the first ones in franchising, and that has helped. And again, it's really that educational approach so people see that. And with marketing, it's not just one thing,
Mhm.
right? It is there's got to be constantly 5 or 6 different things going on. You may have 1 or 2 that are a little bit better than these others, but it's still getting business from these others, right? And then I think the constant evolution of what that is, what's working today may not be what is the best thing next week,
Yeah.
next year, right? And so to me, that's part of the fun part of being the entrepreneur is, with the franchise, there's the plan, right? All the stuff, but you still have to have, we use the acronym or the letters FSO, figure
Good.
stuff out. We usually use different
Yeah.
different S word, but I believe this is your
Step out for
podcast,
your
not
it's
mine.
supposed to be claim. You're right. Thank you so much for
So,
keeping me on track, Tim.
so but you have to be willing to figure stuff out.
What's the biggest challenge you've overcome or the biggest marketing mistake you've made? And what did you learn from it?
From a marketing standpoint, is for me, if everybody is zigging, I am going to zag. And the couple times that I have fallen into, this is what everybody else that does what we do in this industry, this is what everybody else does. So let me do that. It's not gone well, right? When I have been able to use my creativity and our team and figure out, like, how can we do something a little bit different? That's worked out better for me. And there's one kind of thing in franchising that people will use this, they'll call them like a portal, right? And it's just absolute pure crap after pure crap leads. It may be 1 in 500, you get somebody that's worth being on the phone with you, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of franchises and a lot of franchise brokers use them. And I will tell you, literally the last time I did was in 2019. I told at that point, not even, we weren't even engaged then, but I told my now wife, if I ever spend money on one of these again, please just break up with me, right? Because I am too stupid to be with you if I do that again. That's me. That's my view. So for me, I like trying to figure out, it's the old, if anybody watched the movie or read the book Moneyball, right? It's the market inefficiencies, right? How do we find them? How do we take advantage of them?
Mhm.
And then also be an eye on what's the next thing going to be,
Mhm.
right? So I like that. That's the fun part. I'm not the expert at it, but I'm smart enough to get the experts around me, right? That can kind of execute
Mhm.
my thought and vision
Mhm.
on that. And so I think, but with everything, when you start a business, you should, especially in a franchise, every possible marketing thing that they have in place, try it all because you don't really know until you get in it. The advantage you have, they're proven, they know they work.
Mhm.
One's going to work better for you and your location than maybe the next owner, but you're not going to know if you don't get in there and try them all.
Yes.
Get out of your comfort zone a little bit. Because more times than not, you're going to be surprised at what ends up being
For sure.
your best thing.
Great advice. It sounds like really I see this commonality of being outside your comfort zone, trying things, testing things, thinking outside what you know is possible, are all really important in what you do in the franchise world. And certainly in my space, I've only worked with Campbello's as far as franchises, and every owner is very different. Some come from a pharmaceutical background, some have come from computer sales, I mean, it's really across the board. But there has been this love of dogs, and you have to love dogs. I hadn't really thought about the fact that it doesn't necessarily have to be like a passion. They do work with rescues and different things as well, but it can be, and even in marketing, we talk about that. Like our forte is service-based businesses, professional service-based businesses. So we work a lot with dentists, a lot in the wellness space. So dentists, chiropractors, and it's not really like necessarily like I love nice teeth. Don't get me wrong, but I like that they take care of people.
Right.
That's what I like about the business, that there's a level of care and that you're improving their life in some way. That's the thing that's the kind of the driver in all those industries that matter to me.
Right.
But it's not because they're dentists per se. It just
Right.
makes people feel better is what I like
Right.
about it. And doggy daycare too, it makes the dog feel better. So it kind of runs right in
Yep.
line with what I'm passionate about. But we also have things. I've been a foster parent. I'm an army wife. We've adopted. Those are projects that I support with my business
Right.
because that's what actually affects my life in different ways. So I just think it made me think really differently about how and why you franchise and what you would look for. So it's really helpful for me to kind of understand that a little bit better that I did not know beforehand. Do I have a lightning round? Are you ready for the lightning round?
All right, let's go.
You're fun. So how I imagine you have to have relationships with all of the different franchises. How do you curate that and maintain those kinds of relationships?
It's kind of old school. It's just building relationships and getting to know, but not like in a judgmental way. Like, ooh, you only like old people with an MBA. Like, okay, cool. Great to know, right? You like semi absentee owners. You don't, but you do the same thing. Great, right?
If FranCoach had a voice, what word or emotion do you think would resonate from its core?
What word or emotion? I think education is really the thing, is at the core of what we are doing. So we're like recruiters. We get compensated on the
By
back
the
end when somebody
okay.
starts a franchise, right? So um, almost everybody we're going to talk to is not going to start a franchise. So whether getting worked up on, oh my gosh, 90% of the people don't start a franchise and get paid on them. Who cares? Did we do our job? Our job is to educate you on if you should
Mm.
start one. So really, I would just go with it's going to be basically just education.
Is there been a book or a podcast or an entrepreneur that has left an indelible mark on your entrepreneurial journey?
I spent a number of years in athletics, in college athletics. And so I worked for some really, really smart, amazing coaches. There's also been a couple people I've worked for in athletics or in the corporate world that just didn't know what the heck they were doing. And so in some ways, they've helped me also,
Mm.
like, oh, don't be like that, be more over here. And so, but I would tell you and I referenced it earlier. And I read the book Moneyball, and the movie, which is about the Oakland A's in the early 2000s, how they were a ridiculously small market, low budget team trying to compete with the Yankees that were paying each player more than the A's were paying their whole team.
Not
So,
much has changed.
right, right, in that situation for sure, right? And so, um, but anything that if you like sports at all, and anytime they talk about analytics or advanced stats, it all started from the A's back in the early 2000s. And it was market inefficiencies, right? How can we identify valuable players for our organization in a way that other people aren't doing? And so that has in everything that I've ever done since then, that has stuck with me and it has always been kind of the core of what we're doing. But to your question on the marketing, yeah, everybody does this. Awesome. I'm not. I'm doing this. I like being able to figure out those market inefficiencies, to find different ways, even if it's something in our process. How can we tweak and do something different that helps streamline, makes it better?
What's one unconventional tool or app that's become your secret weapon for success? Or has it revolutionized your workflow in some way?
I think there's a couple of things like really simple is a few years ago, I started using like an online organizer, just kind of like getting teching myself up a little bit has helped me from an organizational standpoint. We've tapped into a few things that are kind of AI related. And one that we do from a lead gen standpoint that I always, and my wife even says this sometimes, but I hate it when people go, "Oh, this is going to 10x your business." I'm like, ugh, like that's so cliche, and you don't even know what X is, but you're gonna 10X it. Okay, so but it is really like we're about 7 times better on conversion for leads with this than without it, right? And again, it's not something that's being used very often
Yeah.
in franchising. So, so we were kind of an early adopter there,
Hmm.
and that has made a world of difference.
How do you keep your entrepreneurial spirit alive? What do you feed it?
I'm still a kid and I spent a lot of time being poor. So the simplicities of life. But I don't think that like I don't when that spirit dies in me is probably when I'm on the way out. Because even when I wasn't an entrepreneur, my brain always worked that
Mhm.
way. I just didn't realize it was working that way. And so I just and that's the beauty of this is, you can build up, you can scale down, right? You can't all of a sudden tell your boss you want to be part-time but get the same pay, right? So with this, you always can, and it's things that we can carry into us later in life. Because I'm getting old. I'm 55 now, and it's like you start seeing people that they retire and the decline, right? And I'm like, I'm not like I'm gonna go as long as I can doing something, and being an entrepreneur and that brain being wired that way is what's
Mhm.
gonna allow me, hopefully, to be able to do that as long as possible.
How do you stay grounded and maintain your sense of purpose and clarity?
Fear of failure, I think, is always a good motivator for me, but I try not to get caught up in the narratives, right? It's easy to say, but just staying in the moment and don't worry about all the noise because I can't control that. I can control me, I can control my next conversation and focus on that person, and that's all that matters.
Okay, so the last one is kind of a fun one. May make you think a little bit. Is if your business, if FranCoach was an animal, what creature would it be?
About a year and a half ago, I was not remotely a dog person, and then my wife decided to get a puppy. It's a, Cavapoo, so King James
King
Cavalier Spaniel
Charles. We
something,
have a
something, whatever.
Cavachon. So we have a King Charles Cavalier and a
S
Bichon.
so, Henry is his name, and
Mhm.
so, like, I feel like everyone should be like Henry because Henry sees another human being. He could see you for the first time and he's going to run up, he's going to jump on you, try to lick you to death. You
Mhm.
are his best friend and he's so happy to see you. And I'm like, can we all just be like Henry? So it's a little cheesy, but I seriously like I would be Henry because plus my wife and I have talked about like, oh my gosh, if there's reincarnation,
I
like
want to be
I want
Henry.
I want this dude's life because
Right.
holy crap, like, he doesn't just have bougie dog food, she's boiling chicken to put in the bougie dog food. Meanwhile, I'm gonna have a peanut butter and jelly
Right,
sandwich,
right.
right?
Say so if you were to um look well, actually just any actionable advice that you would give today.
Maybe take a minute and think about why they're doing it to begin with.
Mm,
Sometimes we do have to kinda go back to the beginning and the basics of it, like, "Oh, okay, because something's gonna go wrong, it's not all rainbows and
mhm,
unicorns," and if we can remember that why,
mhm,
again, I think it
mhm.
makes it so much easier, to be able to do that.
It is all about. your story, where you come from, who you are, what lights you up, all that, the why.
Right.
So yeah, really good stuff. Really good stuff. Where before we go, can you share with our listeners where they can learn more about FranCoach and keep up with your latest projects?
No, that would be terrible. So
This is the
yeah,
moment
so
where you get to plug
I'm
everything.
so glad you asked. Um, francoach.net is our main website. We have a podcast called Franchising 101 where you can listen to it wherever you listen or watch your podcasts. And then all the social channels for both FranCoach and Franchising 101. We also are now the only franchise related show on Biz TV. Um, Friday nights, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific. You can find the Franchising 360 show. Where we don't really know what the heck we're talking about yet, but it's just started. So super cool for that. So yeah, but really francoach.net is us, all about us. And if anybody ever wants to chat with us to learn a little bit more, again, there's no fee. Just message us and we'll try to be nice to you and take good care of you and see if this is a pathway for you.
Thank you so much for sharing your wealth of knowledge and expertise with us today. I certainly learned a few things about franchising from you. I appreciate your time.
Beverly, it's been my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me on.
To our listeners who have heard Tim and I talk today all about franchising and a few marketing tips, we hope that we offered some tips and strategies to enhance your own entrepreneurial or possible franchise journey. We hope that this episode was as enlightening for you as it was for us. But remember, you control what you implement and what insights matter to you and for your business. Don't hesitate to reach out to either Tim or myself if you have any questions or need assistance. And stay tuned for more inspiring conversations and actionable tips for your entrepreneurial journey and your marketing magic on the future episodes of the Sparking Ignite Your Marketing podcast. Until next time, keep sparking and igniting.